Well, hello out there in real country. It is high noon, and you are listening to the Marc McMain Show. I am Bob Furr, filling in with Mark on WMOQ 92.3 on your FM dial. Mark is out on the campaign trail looking for a seat to represent District 46 in the Georgia State Senate. We wish him well in that. Now, normally I'd say I'm here with the incomparable Chastity Stewart, but Chastity's out today. Got the incomparable Paul Weekly in here with me today.
Yes, I am here filling in, trying to do the best I can to fill those big shoes of Chastity. She does a bang-up job.
They are big shoes to fill. So I was out last week. Mitch Swan was good enough to fill in for me. I was doing field trips on the trolley for Morgan County schools, and I heard Mitch and Chastity expressing sympathy and prayers toward me as I had 300 fourth graders on the trolley. But I got to tell you, it was fantastic. It was really fantastic. It was great to see the kids interested.
They were interested.
They were. Yeah. I had them for 30 minutes, Paul. And if you can keep fourth graders focused for 30 minutes, and they were really listening. And
wow.
I think it's interesting to them to find out, they hear all this stuff in the abstract about what happened in the Civil War. And Madison played a big role in the Civil War. Morgan County played a big role in the Civil War. First of all, with the railroad, you could easily ship supplies and goods, food, cotton, things to supply the Army. So it was an important supply hub. Georgia throughout the war was an important supply hub for the Confederate Army. Of course, men went to fight. The Panola Guard came from there. And a lot of people don't know that there was a Union prison in Madison. They marched hundreds of Union soldiers after the Battle of Chickamauga in
where
northwest
was the prison
Georgia.
located?
It's near where the cemeteries are today,
okay.
Just over the tracks
Yeah.
and to the left.
Yeah.
And in fact, we don't know how many, but prisons were horrible during the Civil War. And so they marched hundreds of Union soldiers there. And, we don't know how many, we don't know who they are or where they are, but somewhere out in those cemeteries is an untold number of Union dead. And then that building was converted into a hospital. It was one of 4 hospitals that supported the Confederate Army, treating over 1,000 Confederate soldiers. And there's about 79 of them. About 79 is a pretty exact number, but there's 79 of them buried in the cemeteries as well. And then, of course, one of the biggest events of the war, the March to the Sea, came through Georgia. Now, I did hear Mitch and Chastity talking about the March to the Sea and why Sherman spared Madison. I will tell you, since I've been here, by my count, I have 9 different versions of the story of why Sherman spared Madison. And we're going to get into that on another show, I think, in the future. But in the meantime, I do want to talk about Sherman's March. What do you think was the favorite food that Sherman's men wrote about the most in their journals and diaries while they were on the march?
The Madison Trolley Company is Morgan County's newest 5-star attraction.
Now, if we're going to run a commercial inadvertently, I would totally be in favor of it being a Madison Trolley Company commercial. So what do you think was their favorite food? And we got Lee Nunn with us in here from Lee Nunn Farms, 2020 Farmer of the Year. I'll put it out to both of you. What do you think the Union soldiers wrote the most about in their journals that they enjoyed eating on the March to the Sea? No guesses?
I have no idea.
Sweet potatoes.
Wow.
Because, first of all, sweet potatoes don't really grow in the North. And second of all, they were in season and being harvested or had just been harvested when the Army came through. And so all they do is talk about sweet potatoes there. So you know what that was, guys? That was a segue, right? Because I'm going to beautifully segue now into the topic of our discussion today, which is the theme of our show today is Georgia is growing, all right? And or Georgia growing. Now, did you guys know that Georgia ranks number 4 in population growth in the U.S. today? So of all the states, we are number 4 on the list. And from what I see on the Facebook page, what's happening in Morgan County, there's a lot of people not too happy about that. They'd like that growth to happen around Atlanta. Now, you might be wondering, what does population growth have to do with sweet potatoes? Absolutely nothing. Our topic today is actually about agriculture in Morgan County. That's what we're going to be talking about. And with us in the studio is Lee Nunn, owner of Lee Nunn Farms, and he was Georgia's 2020 Farmer of the Year. So welcome, Lee.
Congratulations.
Glad to be here.
Now, since I moved to Morgan County, I have met 2 Teachers of the Year and now a Farmer of the Year. So I've met 3 of the years. I've never ran in such high company as I am today. Hey, speaking of food and high company, I want to touch on the Rock Lobsters real quick. The Athens Rock Lobsters, we talk about them on the show quite a bit. We've had the president and the director of marketing on, and all kinds of big happenings with that team in Athens. So first of all, they won the Continental Division. They were,
How about that?
So
Nice.
that's the good news.
Yeah.
The bad news is they then got swept in the first two games of a 2 or 3 series by the PD Ice Cats from Florida, South Carolina.
Sounds like the Atlanta Flames there for a minute.
Yeah, and it was like you kind of saw it coming, and it's kind of interesting because geopolitics touches Athens, Georgia. They had 2 really strong Russian players that played for them all season, but their visas ran out. And so they had to go back to Russia, and because of the ban on visas, they couldn't get them back into the country to play for the team. And you could just tell it was going to be trouble. And now the more bad news is that's the second time in the year, in 2 years. So their inaugural season, they finished in 3rd place overall in their very first season, made it to the playoffs, and didn't get out of the first round that time as well. So that's the bad news. Then the good news is it hasn't been officially announced yet, but it's the worst kept secret in hockey that they're moving up to the Southern Professional Hockey League.
Oh.
So after only 2 seasons, they're moving from the FPHL, the Federal Prospects Hockey League, to the Southern Professional Hockey League, which is pretty exciting news. And they've also parted ways with their head coach. So just a lot going on with Athens Rock Lobsters. We'll see if we can get them on there to talk about it. Speaking of things going on, coming up the 15th and 16th, Friday and Saturday in Madison, the big tour of homes. Great tradition in Madison, started by the La Flora Gardens Club way back in the day, 75 years ago. Now, whenever I take people on the trolley tour, guys, they're always like, well, can we go in these houses? I'm like, yeah, but you're going to get arrested because they're all private homes. But twice a year in Madison, a big annual event for 75 years, started by this garden club. You can buy a ticket. It's an important fundraiser for the Historical Society and the Cultural Center. They both really depend on it. And you can get into these homes and see what they look like on the inside. And there's some really cool ones on the tour this year. Boxwood, which is one of the most beautiful antebellum homes in town. Also the Peter Walton House, which dates to the late 1800s, beautifully recently restored. There's a home called it's Echo House or something, but I know it is the Leah Ross Wilburn House, built by one of the first and most famous female architects. So go ahead and go to www.mmcc-arts.org and get your tickets there for the tour of homes coming up the 15th and 16th of May. You're listening to Real Country, WMOQ, to the FCC, 92.3 FM to you on your dial. This is the Marc McMain Show. Bob Furr filling in on Tuesdays for Mark, and we are here with Lee Nunn, who is the owner of Lee Nunn Farms and the 2020 Farmer of the Year for the state of Georgia. So we'll get to that in a second. But Lee, we always like to get started on the show by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself and, just give us your background, just, in 45 minutes or less, just tell us your life story and how you got into farming.
All right. Thank you, Bob. I don't think it'll take quite that long. But, I'm lifelong Morgan County resident. Grew up right here in Morgan County in the Bostwick area. Went to school here, graduated high school here in 1993. I went to Athens Tech over in Athens and studied industrial mechanics. Enjoyed that. I've got a wife, Sally, who's a school teacher here in Morgan County. 2 great kids, Claire and Mason. They think they're grown now. I guess they are. One's 23 and the other one's 19. So just glad to be here today. Lifelong resident, proud of agriculture and love to talk about it. So just good times.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've gotten to know Lee a little bit. He's one of the best people I've met here since I've moved here, and he's a lot of fun. I feel like every farmer I've ever known has been a lot of farm. I grew up in farm country. Hey, let's set this stage. Let's talk about agriculture in Morgan County from a historical perspective. So the very first people who came to this area before Madison was Madison, long before Morgan County was Morgan County, were veterans of the American Revolution. So during the Revolution, George Washington, in order to get men to re-enlist in his Continental Army, promised them land grants. Now, he didn't have the land. He intended to take it from Native Americans that, he didn't have it yet. So fast forward to 1790, war's over, Georgia's a state, and now you basically have a state of war between the Creek and the Creek and the Georgians here. And so now President Washington brings the Creek chieftain up to Philadelphia, the nation's capital, and he gets him to give up a large tract of land to the United States. He then uses that land to make good on his promise to his Continental Army veterans, which is why about 60 of them who served under a general by the name of Daniel Morgan, if that sounds familiar to anyone, were the very first to settle here as farmers. So it really, from the very beginning, the area before it was even Morgan County has a farming tradition. Between 1809 and 1920, especially the antebellum period, it was cotton. Right, it was basically fields and fields of cotton. Cotton was king, and this was the heart of it. And then, of course, in 1920, the boll weevil comes to town, and probably one of the most devastating effects, other than the Dust Bowl, I would say, in the history of American agriculture. Right, I mean, just absolutely wiped out the cotton industry. And so, in 1920, there was an 85% reduction in cotton production in Morgan County as a result of the boll weevil. And so the farmers had to diversify. They got into other crops, they got into forage, they got into cattle and timber. They basically diversified and got into other businesses. Meanwhile, let's go back a few years. In the 1880s, you have the Industrial Revolution, and because of the railroad, Madison is right in the heart of the Industrial Revolution, and you have that big industrial corridor in Madison. And so as a result of that, Madison starts to diversify not just agriculturally, but also into manufacturing as well to go into there. So now cotton takes another hit when you get into the 50s and 70s with the introduction of polyester and synthetic fibers and such like that. And then it made a comeback in the 80s and 90s as a result of a marketing campaign. So some of you may be old enough to remember the saying, "the fabric of your life." And the cotton industry did a brilliant job of making people think that they needed cotton instead of these synthetic fibers. And there was a brief resurgence, during that time. However, it was too late. The farmers here had really already diversified away from the crop, and it's still a part of production here. You grow cotton. Do you have any sense for what percentage of the crops grown in Morgan County today are cotton? I know most of the cotton production's moved to the south of the state.
That's right. Actually, Morgan County and Bostwick has the only cotton gin north of Dublin or Macon in North Georgia, and so that allows us to still grow cotton in the area. There's about 16 to 1,800 acres of cotton in Morgan County every year, so it's a small percentage of the total crops grown in the county, but it's still here and it has a strong foothold. And as long as we have a cotton gin here locally, I think there will be people to grow cotton.
So Paul, Lee gave me a first experience in my life, something I had never done before, and at my there's not a lot of those left at my age, but for the very first time in my life, I got to pick cotton. Because we do a little thing, I don't want to give it away, but we do a little thing on the trolley with cotton, and so I needed a bunch of cotton, and Lee's like, sure, go out in my field, So I'm out there, it's like dark, right? It's getting dark. I'm out there with like a headlamp on, putting cotton into a big garbage bag, and I'm like, okay, the Yankee is going to get shot, coming through and trying to pick cotton here and all the rest of it. I'm looking a little suspicious with my car on the side of the road, and two things I'll tell you. One is, man, that was a rough job. Like, I did it I bet I was out there 45 minutes just to fill a garbage bag. And thinking back, especially to those enslaved people, doing it 12 to 14 hours a day, I mean, that was rough work. But the last part of the story is, so just when it's really getting dark and I'm really getting nervous, all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, get out of that field!" And I look and it's Lee sitting in his pickup truck going by. So, hey, you're listening to the Marc McMain Show on Real Country 92.3. We are talking about farming with Georgia's 2020 Farmer of the Year. We're going to be talking about it. He is Lee Nunn of Lee Nunn Farms. We are going to take a short break to let our sponsors grow their business with a few commercial messages, and then we'll be right back.
The Madison Trolley Company is Morgan County's newest 5-star attraction. We offer historic Madison tours year-round, a haunted history experience in the fall, and our Madison Lights Christmas Tour and Mary Maddie Express Adventure for kids have become new holiday traditions. Our private charters add vintage charm to weddings and special occasions aboard a historic trolley by day, party trolley by night. Find us on the Madison Town Square or get on board by visiting madisontrolley.com or calling us at 706-997-1800.
I chuckled at a cartoon that showed a news conference by a United States senator who announced that he was divorcing his family so he could spend more time with politics. We may laugh, but the truth is many people make that statement every day. Maybe not with words, but with their actions. In fact, if a politician retires from his work to spend more time with his family, it becomes the lead story, met with cynicism on the evening news, while the one who rejects his family advancing his career is commonplace. God tells us we should work hard to the glory of God, but He has clearly shown that we must have priorities. A relationship with God first, and family follows that. What does your focus tell you about your priorities? The Bible says that we have brought nothing into this world and we can take nothing out of it. It's good to focus on the things that last, like putting God first, and then family, and then people all around us that God loves. This is Bryant Wright, speaking right from my heart.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org and click television to watch our TV spots.
As spring blooms, so does engagement season. At P&A Jewelers, voted the area's best jeweler and jewelry store, and celebrating 50 years, we offer a beautiful selection of engagement rings. Let us custom create exactly what your heart desires. Visit us in person next to Quick Trip in Loganville or online at shoppajewelers.com. P&A Jewelers, where your forever begins.
All right, welcome back, Real Country. Go ahead and plant yourself right where you are and keep your radio tuned to 92.3 because we are about to get into all things agriculture here on the Marc McMain Show. Bob Furr filling in for Mark on Tuesdays, along with Paul Weekly today, filling in for Chastity Stewart. It's fill-in day here at the studio. And we're with Lee Nunn of Lee Nunn Farms, and Lee was also the 2020 Georgia Farmer of the Year, and we are about to dig into the world of farming. So Lee, I guess I want to lead. I noticed in reading about your background and stuff that there's a couple things we have in common, and one of them is we both loved our work. So before I retired, I was a consultant. I was focused on people performance, helping people and companies grow, and I always used to say that I was blessed that I got to love, what I do. And my dad used to always tell me, you know the saying, if you love what you do for work, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yep,
and
exactly.
I loved a quote that I saw that you had said, which was, "I'm on the farm all day, every day, doing what I love." So why do you love what you do? And tell us how you came to love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in my blood. It's what my family has done here for a very long time. My great-great-grandfather was actually a grist mill operator. If nobody knows what that is, it takes corn and flour and things over on the Appalachian River. He worked for the Price, I think it was the Price family, and it's called where you get Price Mill Road here in this. So he was a grist mill operator, and he came and purchased a parcel of land in Bostwick. Bostwick wasn't a city. As soon as it turned into a city in 1908, he bought the land in 1928. So our farm's almost 100 years old here in Bostwick.
Wow.
Yeah, and he started growing cotton. And actually, you were talking about the boll weevil a minute ago. My great-grandfather and his wife actually left Bostwick, I think about in 1929 or 30, and went to Miami to get jobs. They had some relatives they knew down and went down there, and my great-grandfather drove an ice truck, from what we understand, for about 2 years to make enough money to keep the farm, to pay for the farm up here in Boston.
Wow.
So they wouldn't lose it. A lot of people lost their farms in the late 20s
Yep.
for the boll weevil and things like that. A lot of people don't know this, but Bostwick actually had a bank at that time.
Gotcha.
And the bank actually went under at that time. I've heard stories about the bank owner running off in the middle of the night, but that's another
well, the banks weren't real banks then. I point this out on the tour, like right on the town square, you got the old Bank of Morgan County building, and they were really just rich dudes who put their money together, and then they would actually design the buildings like that one with the columns in front and the terracotta to give this impression of stability and security, which we found out in 1929 never existed.
There was no security in that, so, our farm started in 1928 here. We still, the land is still owned by my grandfather and my uncle to this day. I do not farm any of that land. My uncle has cattle and hay on the land at this point. But, it's a pretty interesting story of them coming here and buying it and us able to hold on to it for that long throughout the years. But, my grandfather was a farmer as well. He was a cattle farmer. He had a dairy. He also grew row crops through the years. And he decided in the mid-'80s, after the high interest rates of the late '70s and some tough droughts in that time. We're going through a pretty good drought right now here in the area, but he decided to retire from the dairy business and the crop business in 1986, and he sold some of his excess land that they had acquired through the years, and just kind of stayed as a cattle operation, small cattle operation. I was 12 years old when he retired, so I was just getting old enough, to help him on the farm. So that was kind of a big blow to me for the farm basically just to go away. We still had a little bit of equipment, but there weren't day-to-day things to do on the farm anymore.
And that had filled your childhood at that point.
That did. I can my earliest memories of riding equipment and chasing cows and things like that. My early pickup trucks, driving pickup trucks.
Good way to grow up.
Yep, driving pickup trucks when you're barely tall enough to reach the pedals. There was a lot of that going on here in this small community. And so I basically got away from farming for a few years. Through my high school years, I played sports, played baseball, things like that, and just wasn't deeply involved in agriculture in my teenage years and late teenage years. Like I said, I went to Athens Tech, and I got out and I got a job with a local cattle farmer here, basically doing maintenance type things, because that was my background. I knew how to work on things. Always been good with my hands and liked to tinker on things. And that gentleman asked me to build a hay barn for him. He knew my family had some construction background, my stepfather, and so I actually started a hay barn for him, and it was out right by the road. Well, by the time I got that barn finished, I had 3 more to build. And so needless to say, that's where my construction side of my ag business started, was right there. That was 1996. And I started my ag construction business then. We did fencing as well as agricultural type buildings. Did that for numerous years, but farming was still in my blood. I still liked equipment. I would help people, sporadically and help them farm and do things because it was there. I always loved it, but I just didn't have the opportunity at that time. And about, I think it was 2005, there was a portion of land on my wife's family's farm. The farmer that had been farming it decided not to farm it anymore, and it was only 50 acres. And I took a leap of faith and decided to plant that 50 acres in wheat, my first wheat crop. Didn't have a tractor. I borrowed equipment, borrowed things, had a lot of people help me, and that's when I actually started farming on my own. It was 2005 with a 50 acre parcel of land. So that's where it all began.
Wow, what a great story. And you're one of those people, like, you can feel the enthusiasm, right, Paul, while he talks. Like, it's not just somebody talking about their job. You can feel the energy.
It's not a job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can just feel that from you. You're listening to the Marc McMain Show on Real Country 92.3 FM. Bob Furr here with Paul Weekly. Bob Furr filling in for Marc McMain on the Marc McMain Show, and Paul Weekly filling in for Chastity Stewart. And we are about to harvest a wealth of information from Lee Nunn of Lee Nunn Farms and the Georgia Farmer of the Year. But Lee, you didn't really answer my question. I could see that you love farming. What is it about it that you love? Like, why do you love it?
Well, basically, Bob, I love putting a seed in the ground in the spring and watching it grow all year and tending that crop through the year. I've always loved doing that. And also farming has flexibility to it. Through the years, you can you can take time off to do certain things, to go to your son's baseball game or football game, to go, watch your daughter cheer, which both of my kids are very active in school sports and school activities. But now that also means the job still has to get done. Just because we took off this afternoon at 3 o'clock to go to the baseball game, well, we still got to get the job done. So we have to do that, have to add that time back somewhere. So it's not like we're not, not working as much or being lazy at all. But the flexibility of the job is really great. I mean, that's what I really like as well. But watching things grow and I guess still have the kid in me of operating equipment. I just love that. It's the big sandbox. Your field's your big sandbox. And that's still fun to me. I still enjoy that. Even as I get older, that's one of the things I really like to do is go get on a piece of equipment and turn off the phone, try to turn off the phone and just turn the dirt. Nothing like the smell of fresh dirt. If nobody's just put your hands in it, I mean, that'll get to you.
Plus, I love driving big things too. The very first thing I ever drove was a fire truck. So that's how I learned to drive on fire trucks, and then I got a job at a school as a school bus driver, and so when people ask me what got me into the trolley business, I'm like, well, I love history, I love people, and I like driving big things.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, I want to go back to your family story a second because there's a couple things. You mentioned the farm started in 1928.
1928.
Yeah, and a moment ago I talked about something big happened in American history in 1929, which was the Great Depression. So
Absolutely.
what was that impact like on the family?
Well, like I said, my great grandfather and his wife, my great grandmother, actually moved to Miami.
Okay, so that was after.
That was after the
okay.
Yeah, because the boll weevil. I mean, the boll weevil was rampant at that time, and there was just no money to be made. I mean,
Gotcha.
People grew their own, grew a lot of their own crops, their gardens, and had things, but you still needed money for things.
Yeah.
And most farms, I mean, they had a debt for the land that they were trying to pay. They didn't want to, what you hear, lose the farm. I mean, basically, so they moved away, and some of the family was still there to tend to things on a very small scale, but it took 2 years, and they weren't unique in that. There were a lot of families in communities all over, especially in Bostwick, that was really heavy in cotton, that actually moved off to different places to get have income, meaningful jobs.
Well, and the 1920s were bookended by economic disaster here in Morgan County, right? You start the decade in 1920 with the boll weevil impacting the cotton industry, and then, of course, you end the decade in 1929 with the Great Depression. By the way, I would say that if I spent my summers farming in Georgia heat, driving an ice truck would be exactly the job that I would be after and be looking for. My history's a little fuzzy on this, but you might know about it. About the same period you were talking about them shutting down the dairy farm, wasn't there a buyout of some kind? Didn't the government come through because there was a glut of... Help us out on that a little bit.
My grandfather was a part of the buyout.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I think he was one of the lowest, if I remember the story correctly, he was one of the lowest bidders in the county. There was a certain, I don't know all the details, but you had a certain amount of money you would offer basically, to get out of the business for milk and the beef for the cattle. And he was ready. It was time. He was ready to retire and be done with the dairy and farming business.
If I understand how that worked correctly, it was really interesting. You had to put a per head price on your cattle.
Correct.
And then you didn't know what the government would pay for it, but then they gathered all the per head prices that all the farmers had submitted, and then they picked from that list. So if you overbid, you could end up stuck in the dairy business when the dairy business was really struggling.
And that's why he bid low.
Right. And if you underbid, then you could end up leaving money on the table.
And he did. He still talks about saying he left a little
money on the table,
but he wanted to be finished because he went through the 20% interest days of the late 70s and early 80s, and people think interest is high now. Well, they don't know high of what it was back then.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Marc McMain Show on Real Country 92.3. We are talking about farming with Georgia's 2020 Farmer of the Year, Lee Nunn of Lee Nunn Farms. We're going to have to crop the conversation short here for a second for a few minutes. We're going to rotate to some commercial messages, and then we'll be right back.
Miranda, founder of the Humane Society of Walton County. We're a community-funded, no-kill shelter for homeless dogs and cats. On May 30th, we're raffling off a brand new 2024 Jeep Wrangler or $40,000 in cash. Tickets start at $30 each, with only 5,000 being sold. To purchase your tickets, visit humanewalton.org. You don't want to miss this chance to win a brand new 2024 Jeep Wrangler or $40,000 in cash, all benefiting the Humane Society of Walton County.
I'm Brett Malden, Republican for State House. My wife Candace and I are blessed to raise 3 kids right here in our community, and I believe my role as a father is to protect. And that includes protecting our conservative values. In the State House, that's exactly what I'll do. Whether it's crushing the woke agenda, cracking down on sanctuary cities, securing our elections, or defending our rights from government overreach, I'll stand up for your family and for mine. I'm Brett Malden, and I approve this message because our way of life is worth protecting. Paid for by Brett Malden for Georgia Inc.
Is your home's AC ready for spring? Call Tony Beck Heating and Cooling for tune-ups or to install a new heating and cooling system. As a Lennox Premier dealer, we provide expert service, and it's an investment that pays off with lower energy bills. For a limited time, purchase a new qualifying Lennox system for up to $1,800 in rebates, or qualified buyers make no payments, incur no interest for 12 months when financing a new Lennox system. Contact Tony Beck Heating and Cooling at 770-466-2924 or beckheating.com today. Conditions apply. See dealer for details. HVAC license number CN001627.
Welcome back to the Marc McMain Show. Bob Furr filling in for Marc on Tuesdays, here with Paul Weekly on 92.3. He's filling in for Chastity Stewart. We're talking with Lee Nunn, Georgia's 2020 Farmer of the Year, about all things agriculture. You notice, guys, I didn't do any dad jokes or puns there.
I noticed that.
Yeah, you know why? I felt like you were starting to find them irrigating. Hey, Lee, before we get back into it, you just mentioned something real quick before the commercial break. I don't know if you noticed. So the strangest thing happened to me today. I woke up this morning, I was out of my office, and then all of a sudden, water started falling from the sky.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's called rain or something. I don't know if you noticed.
That's what they call it.
I don't know if you noticed it was raining today.
Absolutely did.
Yeah. So, but speaking of rain, there are 2 types of people that love rain more than anybody else: farmers and firefighters. Mm-hmm. And we all see what's going on in South Georgia with those raging forest fires. Lee, you were just telling us about someone you're affiliated with making an effort. Let's get that out there right now.
I was, please. Yeah, thank you. Our local UGA extension agent, Lucy Ray, here in Morgan County, they are, the last few days, I know it's kind of short notice, but they have been taking, asking for donations, any type donations, water, anything you can think of that they would need down there, or monetary donations. The Ag Extension Office is going to be making a trip either Thursday or Friday. They haven't decided yet, to go down to either Brantley or both counties, Brantley and Eccles maybe, down that way, to take whatever donations we can give for them here in Morgan County. And they would be, very glad for anything you could possibly give. And you can take that to the Extension Office in Morgan County, which is just down from the courthouse, kind of behind United Bank, if you don't know where that is. Or you can look it up. Their phone number is 342-2214, and they need as much help. Those guys in South Georgia, it's pretty bad down there from what I'm hearing and seeing.
Yeah, just from what you see, and Morgan County jumped right in from the start. I noticed one of the first things, of course, horses, livestock are in jeopardy, and right away the agriculture community here started offering up barns and facilities. We have the big horse facilities with UGA nearby and all that sort of thing. So it was great to see everybody get involved in that.
Thank you. If anybody could help with that, that would be great.
Yeah. So people throw around and even make fun of the idea of thoughts and prayers. That's only a joke if you don't really believe it. So thoughts and prayers going out to the people in South Georgia. So Lee, the other thing that I noticed about our work that we kind of had in common is I was always famous for the phrase data-driven decisions. And so there's a guy named W. Edwards Deming who had a quote that I always loved, and that was, "Without data, you're just another person with an opinion." And I know that you use data a lot in farming and technology a lot in farming, and I don't think people necessarily make that connection all the time, right? I think they think, we're just out planting seeds and driving a tractor, but data and technology is a huge part of farming. Tell us more about that.
Yes, it's an extremely huge part. Now, for about the past 15 years, we have started using an extreme amount of data and technology on our equipment. One of the very first things that we stepped into was the auto steer auto steer tractors. And auto steer basically is the computer. The tractor has a computer in it that will actually drive the tractor straight back and forth across the field all day long, every day, every hour, 24 hours a day if you want it to. This system is a pretty sophisticated system. You have a GPS receiver on top of the tractor. A lot of your automobiles have GPSs in them now. Well, tractors have had this for about 25 years now. So the ag industry normally is a few years ahead of any kind of automobile industry or anything like that. With this technology, this allows us to not actually concentrate on steering the tractor in the field or concentrate. We can actually be looking at the equipment, behind us, seeing what's going on, checking things like that. But this technology is great, and it's not nearly as fatigued or tired at the end of the day after not having to physically steer the tractor. And some people say, well, yeah, I like driving. I like driving too. But when you're actually operating and not having to hold on to the steering wheel or trying to make the perfect straight rows, because that's one of the jokes in farming. When you farm out near the highway, people will pick on you a little bit about your crooked rows if you're going in like a snake, So that's kind of one of those things. But, the auto steer option in the tractor, that's a great thing. We've been using it numerous years now. Another thing that the equipment, I can actually, the data that's in the tractor, this tractor is receiving data from the implement, the planter, the plow, or anything like that in real time. Like every second, it's receiving data to that piece of equipment, that tractor. Well, I can take my phone out, or a laptop, or an iPad, or a computer at my desk in the office, and I can actually pull that piece of equipment up and look at it in real time. And that's kind of a neat option. I can actually pull up the display and look at what the operator is actually doing. I can see the exact same thing that he's seeing as he's driving through the field, and that technology is great. What that leads to, it's just the other day, my son was actually planting cotton here in Bostwick, actually, and he had a little issue with the planter, and I'm 15 to 20 minutes away. Well, I pull up the display and get him to go through the screen on the tractor, and I fixed the problem sitting 20 miles away. I told him what to do. And so it's trying to be efficient. So I physically did not have to drive out to the field, look at what was wrong, fix it, and then drive back. So basically that technology saved me about an hour in my day that I could be doing something else. And that's, we have to be so efficient. And this data goes up to a cloud, and we can access it at any point in time, and it's there basically forever.
Goes up to a cloud and you can access it anytime. It would be good rain if you could do that with rain.
Absolutely.
So is this what the precision agriculture we're hearing about? Is that what you're referring
absolutely.
to? Okay.
And in all of our harvesters, our combine harvesters, your cotton pickers, they are recording the yield data as you go across the field. So you know exactly what parts of the field are yielding better than others. And what that allows you to do the next spring, you can actually apply more fertilizer in the weak areas and maybe a little bit less. Just trying to be good stewards of the land. You don't want to over apply anything, whether there's chemicals, fertilizer, as tight as the margins are in any business, and especially farming these days, the more efficient we can be, the better off we are. That's the only way we can make it right now is to be super efficient. And using all this data and all this technology, it does have a cost, but the return on that investment is substantial. I mean, I feel like we get it back in a couple of years, honestly, from the savings we have on time, fuel, fertilizer, chemicals. I mean, those three things are super expensive these days.
You're listening to the Marc McMain Show on Real Country, Q92.3. On your FM dial, we are talking all things farming with Lee Nunn, Georgia's 2020 Farmer of the Year. Hey, let me ask you this. You were talking about the technology and things there, but it can't all be data, right? So another one of my favorite quotes is by an English journalist named Miles Kington, and it says, "Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it into a fruit salad." So tell us a little bit about, when do you trust the data? When don't you trust the data? When is it intuition? Like, how does your experience and gut feel, if you will, play into it?
Yeah, I mean, we still, I run most of the harvesting equipment, and we still use eyesight a lot of times on a crop. That's, the best thing you can see in a field, they say, is your shadow. Putting your eyes on things physically is still, in my opinion, the best way to look at a to look at a crop and to figure it out. Yes, we have a lot of data, and in my opinion, sometimes too much, and you can become overwhelmed with data if you're not careful. And you have to take that data and use it, and it's a good thing to have it, but still putting a good set of eyes on a crop in a field, there's nothing any better than that.
So give us some, so the last time, one of the shows I did a while ago, I had a couple of guys on, a helicopter pilot from Vietnam and then a submariner, Stratton Hickey and Tom McNamara. And afterwards, Stratton was saying, I didn't get a chance to tell my sea stories. There's some really great stories. So you got some farm stories for us? Any good ones you'd like to share?
Yeah, we've got some pretty good ones. In this county, we, to much chagrin to a lot of people, we use a lot of poultry and animal manure here. Yes, everybody, I know it has a smell to it, but it is the best, most all-natural organic fertilizer that you can use. There are a lot of poultry houses in the county, so we have an abundant supply of poultry litter in this county. We farm a good bit around Madison in some of the industrial corridor, out around I-20 and around some of the fast food restaurants. And I got a picture a few years ago. I didn't physically see it myself, but I know it was true. I saw the picture. There was a sign posted. I think it was in either Burger King, one of the restaurants, Burger King or Wendy's or somewhere. And it was said, "The smell is sorry. The smell is not from us." Well, that gave me a big kick because we had been applying poultry litter around some of those places out there. But, after a couple days, it goes away. So, everybody wants to see the green grass, and one way to make the green grass is with the manure, and it works really well. So, yeah, that's a pretty funny story. We've another story. It's not as funny, but we've got a wedding venue that's near my farm headquarters, and we're supposed to communicate with each other on big events of when they're having weddings and when I'm applying fertilizer, manure, and trying to be good neighbors to each other. And one of the weddings slipped up on them. They forgot to mention it, or maybe I didn't get the message. I don't know, one of the two. But we actually applied some fertilizer on a field on a Thursday afternoon, and lo and behold, there was a wedding at the wedding venue on Saturday. And so I heard that the bridal party showed up that Friday afternoon, and they were none too happy about the situation there at their venue. And so I got a call, and I did the best I could. Actually, I went and hooked up a piece of equipment and actually late that Friday evening tilled that manure in the soil. I told him, I said, I don't know if it's going to be 100%, but honestly, by that Saturday afternoon, it was gone. But that was a pretty interesting Friday evening for me there. The last thing I wanted to do was ruin somebody's special day. So
you were not.
I was just going to ask a quickie question. I don't know that as I'm from New England, but been living down here, but it's a story that I wanted to know about. When you get ready to process the cotton, you send it to a cotton gin. Mm-hmm. What is a cotton gin, and why is it called a gin?
It comes from the term of engine. Yep. Engine is where it comes from, and the process of a gin is really simple. If you take a fiber of cotton, and Bob will have to bring you one sometime. I don't know if I got one out in my truck or not, but the process of a cotton gin is removing the fiber or the lint from the seed of the cotton. Because a cotton boll has lint and seed. Actually, there's more seed by weight. There's more seed in that bowl of cotton than there is lint or fiber. And that's what the gin. Obviously, the textile mills or the linen, you can't use the seed for making shirts or clothes or anything. So that gets removed. And the seed is used for numerous things. Just look at anything. There is cottonseed oil in almost everything, numerous uses for cottonseed. But that's what a cotton gin does. Then it packs the fiber into about a 500-pound bale. That bale is shipped off to a warehouse, and the cotton is actually graded as well on quality and color and different things like that. And then it's sold to an importer. And 80%, I'm sad to say, 80% of our cotton in the United States is exported. So we send it out, and then we have to bring it back. And we're trying to change that.
So they call it a gin because of its engine.
It was an engine that ran.
And Eli Whitney.
Yeah. So we all controversy in that. We all learn about this in school, right? So you know what? We're up against a couple commercials here. here, but let's talk more. We're going to talk a little cotton gin history here when we come back in a second. You're listening to the Marc McMain Show, WMOQ to the FCC, Q92.3 on your FM dial. We're going to take a few commercial break. We'll be right back.
Madison Trolley Company is Morgan County's newest 5-star attraction. We offer historic Madison tours year-round, a haunted history experience in the fall, and our Madison Lights Christmas Tour and Mary Maddie Express Adventure for kids have become new holiday traditions. Our private charters add vintage charm to weddings and special occasions aboard a historic trolley by day, party trolley by night. Find us on the Madison Town Square or get on board by visiting MadisonTrolley.com or calling us at 706-997-1800.
Are you looking for new tires? Well, look no further than Madison Car Care. They have the largest selection and you'll always get the best price. They also handle a wide range of auto repairs, from the small things like oil changes and wiper blades to the big things like suspension, parts, and radiators. They offer all kinds of accessories, from toolboxes to bed covers, side steps, and they even install those awesome ranch hand bush guards. Give them a call at 706-342-4774 or stop by at 1040 Confederate Road in Madison.
Make sure your diesel is ready for every season by stopping in at Leadfoot Diesel. Their technicians have many years of combined experience to keep your Cummins, Power Stroke, and Duramax running the way it should. Plus, they can improve fuel mileage, perform upgrades, AC repair, and they offer tires, wheels, lift kits, and more. Diesel owners from all over the country trust Leadfoot Diesel, 320 Mayfield Drive in Monroe. Stop in or go to leadfootdiesel.com.
Serving Loganville and the surrounding area for over 25 years, it's the Main Street Barbershop, 305 Main Street next to Braxton's Auction in downtown Loganville, offering old-fashioned service and modern-day styles. Appointments available and walk-ins welcome. Open Tuesday through Saturday with a friendly staff and atmosphere. That's Main Street Barbershop in downtown Loganville. Call 770-554-3300 or go to mainstreetbarberloganville.com to learn more.
Well, welcome back to the Marc McMain Show, folks. Bob Furr filling in for Mark here on Real Country Q92.3, along with Paul Weekly. We're talking with Lee Nunn of Lee Nunn Farms, talking all things agriculture. And right before the commercial break, Paul pushed me with both hands down into a rabbit hole by bringing up the cotton gin. Because, so in 1793, Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. Now, there's some controversy about that. What I've seen, the most reliable story is that not only did he invent the cotton gin, he actually invented it while staying at the home of the widowed wife of our own Daniel Morgan, that Morgan County is named for. Now, there's controversy about who invented it first, if somebody else came up with the technology. What's interesting is Eli Whitney made almost nothing off the cotton gin. Other people produced it much quicker. Mm-hmm. But, we all learn it in school, right? I should say we memorize it in school, right? We all have to match Eli Whitney 1793 to the cotton gin. And because somehow this invention had such an impact on the country that you could point to the cotton gin as an impact on this causing the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And the reason is, we do it on the trolley tour. I hate to give it away, but we give people a little piece of cotton and have them experience taking the cotton seeds out of there. So in 1790, before the cotton gin was invented, if you took all the cotton production of the entire American South and put it together, it was 3,000 bales of cotton a year. By 1860, the South was producing 4 million bales of cotton a year. King cotton was bigger than all other American industries and railroads and businesses combined. Cotton accounted for more than half of all American exports, and cotton accounted for more than half of all American gross domestic product. And all that was because of the invention of the cotton gin, and because it made it so much quicker to get the seeds out. As the Ken Burns series says, Eli Whitney showed the South how to make cotton pay. And unfortunately, during that same period, the enslaved population of this country went from 700,000 people throughout the nation to just under 5 million in the American South alone. So, we all understand it, we all memorize it, but did we really learn the impact of that? So,
and I know, because I had always heard the story that Eli Whitney had invented the cotton gin, but the way I heard it was that he called it the cotton gin. Well, they called it a cotton gin because Eli Whitney was constantly walking around saying, "Keep your cotton picking hands off my gin," and so that's how it came about.
That sounds like a very New England story, Paul.
Yes.
So let's stay on cotton, Lee. Let's walk us through it, right? So from the day you wake up and say, "Oh yeah, I got to get," we're going to plant cotton. Like, walk us through the very first stages and steps as a representative crop, what it takes to get cotton from the very first step to it's out of your hands and handed over to wherever it gets handed over to.
Yeah, sure, Bob. That's to preface that, it's my favorite crop to grow. It's what I like to grow the most. I do not grow my acreage is only about 400 acres or so, give or take, of cotton a year. So it's only about a quarter of my acreage. Cotton starch is really a year-round crop. It doesn't grow year-round, but it's a year-round thing to think about and manage. We start off in January or February. We have to think about the acreage we're going to do, and that leads us into purchasing seeds, getting our chemicals and all that type thing in line earlier in the year. And then normally around about March, we'll actually start killing the weeds or the grasses that have been growing in our fields. It's called a burn down. We use a chemical for that. And then we'll come in, that's when the fertilizing comes in, when the great smell around the town. That shows up then about the first part of April. And then normally the middle to the last part of April will be planting time. Well, in this part of Georgia, we try to be try to conserve the dirt as well. We have rolling ground here in this part of the state. We're not flat like they are in South Georgia, so we have to be very mindful of erosion here. So we use in this part of the state what they call a strip till machine. It just lays off a small bed in the fields. If you ever rode by, you'll see the strip looks like strips across the field. What that does, we till a small area, and then we leave the other area in between the rows of cotton. We leave that undisturbed. That's got the residue of the previous year's crop, helps hold moisture, helps with weed control and things like that. So it's almost like putting pine straw in your bed or putting mulch around your plants in your garden. That's basically what we're trying to do. We're just tilling a small strip through the field. That's worked really well here. We've been doing that for probably 30 years in this area, and it's really saved on soil erosion and also conserves moisture in times like this when it's dry. Then the crop is planted normally late April, first part of May. The seeds put in the ground, and then it's off to the races then. Hopefully we have a good year with water, and the good Lord supplies us with adequate rainfall through the year. As the crop's growing, we have to continually monitor it for bug pressure. I would say cotton is one of the crops that has the most amount of bugs that'll chew on it, eat on it, peck on it. I mean, everything in the world goes to a cotton plant for some reason. So we have to be really mindful of that, keeping the bugs and things out of it, keeping the weeds and the grasses out of it all year. And one thing people don't know, I think, about cotton, we have to put a growth regulator on cotton. Cotton is almost like a tree. Cotton, if you don't control the actual growth of cotton will get 6-8 feet tall if you just let it grow. And so people say, well, that's a bigger plant, it would have more yield. No, that's the opposite effect. It puts all the growth and all its energy in growing up the plant, and it has very little fruit on it. So we try to keep it, you want cotton about 3 to 3.5 feet tall. So we have to continuously through the year, depending on the amount of rainfall we get and how dry and hot it is, keep the growth of the cotton down. Towards the later part of the fall, normally 1st of October every year, the cotton is matured. It's made all its bolls. It's hopefully had a good year, adequate rainfall, and we actually take the leaves off, called defoliate, knock the leaves off, as some of the old timers would. That's the old saying, knocking the leaves off, and that makes it to where your cotton will open up good, get plenty of sunshine, dry out the lint, and it also makes your cotton picker a lot more efficient. It doesn't have all the green leaves and the trash that go into the cotton. So the cotton gin is also more efficient as well. We'll harvest the cotton in October-ish, around that time. I know some people around have seen the big, call them loaves in the field, the big modules. People, we actually dump the cotton in a machine that packs it into that big loaf or module. There's about 15 bales of lint cotton in that module. So, that's about whatever that is, that's about 7,500 pounds, give or take, of lint. And then there's about 10,000 or so pounds of seed in that cotton, so in that module. So that thing's pretty heavy. You're talking about a 10, 12 ton bale of cotton there. Cotton looks light when you hold it, but cotton, when it's compressed, can actually be very dense and very heavy.
And like you're saying about the cotton seeds, it's in everything from industrial lubricants and lacquers to cooking oil. Like if you've ever had a French fry or potato chip, you can count on it having been cooked in cooking oil. You're listening to Marc McMain Show on Real Country 92.3. We are talking all things farming with Lee Nunn, 2020 Georgia Farmer of the Year and owner of Lee Nunn Farm and Fence. On the Marc McMain Show, Bob Furr filling in for Mark. So, Lee, you were saying?
Well, if you've ever eaten a steak or anything, a large portion of the cattle in this country are fed cottonseed as well. Cottonseed is very high in protein. All of the cottonseed from our local gin here in Bostwick goes down to Godfrey's warehouse in Madison. It goes right into cattle feed, mostly dairy feed here in the county. So milk and meat. Cottonseed is has more usage than just about any other kind of seed.
And isn't it true that the little hairs on the cotton seeds are used to make fine papers, especially for currency?
Absolutely.
So
they
really
interesting. Every single thing is used, and we put it in the module. The gin comes and picks it up with a specialized truck, takes it to the gin, runs it through the gin as we talked about before, removes the lint, the seed from the lint, packed into a bale, goes down to a warehouse in Madison, and then a company actually based out of Mississippi. Depending on the grade of the cotton, they actually come and buy it and send a truck, and we go out. The gin operator goes out and loads up whatever they call for, and like I say again, approximately 80% of it is to the export market. So that's the full year.
So it's going overseas. People are making stuff out of it in textile facilities where the labor is cheap, and then we're paying to bring it back here.
Sending it back. I wish we could get more textile mills in the United States. That would be a great deal for cotton.
So I'm going to touch real quick on, 2020, you're the Georgia Farmer of the Year.
Correct.
You were nominated, if I saw correctly, by Lucy Ray, who you mentioned earlier with the University of Georgia.
Yes.
Go Dogs. And I noticed that you've done some work with them around moisture and water. I mean, water, you hear about the controversy with the rivers, what state gets the rivers. One minute we're in a drought, the next minute we're in a flood. Farmers live and die by water. Talk to us a little bit about water management and how, the work you did. What do you think made you the Farmer of the Year? And then, well, let's do that first, but let's leave time because I want to kind of get a state of farming from you and help people understand just how important it is to Morgan County.
Yeah, the thing we've worked with UGA most, we've did some water research on soil moisture in your fields. We use water sensors to test the amount of moisture. I have one farm that is irrigated here in Bostwick. It's pulled from a surface pond, so we don't have an unlimited supply of water. So we have to use the technology that's available to get the most efficient use of water to know exactly what the crop needs. Instead of just going out there and turning it on every week, we want to know exactly how much the crop needs, and we'll give it that exact amount of water.
So we got about 2 minutes left here, Lee. Give us a state of farming. Give us the state of farming in Morgan County, how important it is, and tell us everything you want people to hear about farming.
Well, agriculture is extremely important in Morgan County. It is still by far the number one industry in this county. We have about 148,000 acres in Morgan County is in production. The county is about 228,000 acres. So that goes to show you, that's timber, that's hay, that's cattle, that's row crops. With all that adds up to about $177 million, what you call farm gate value for this for our county, Morgan County. And believe it or not, that ranks 31st in the state of Georgia.
Wow.
Morgan County is very diverse. We grow cotton, corn, wheat. We have a lot of livestock. We have a lot of chicken houses. A lot of hay. We have numerous dairies. Agriculture is very important. I hope it stays that way in Morgan County. It's a double-edged sword, though. It's the reason a lot of people want to move here is because of the rural character and the agriculture that we do have. But, the last thing I'd like to say is us farmers, we're stewards of the land. We want to leave it better than, we want to leave it to my kids better than I found it. And we do everything we can do to do the best job that we can, for that land and for our operations.
That's awesome. And I'll tell you, I think people fail to appreciate it. So at first glance, you look, agriculture and manufacturing about neck and neck, but then you look again, half or more of the manufacturing in this county is agribusiness related that serves it. Just so critical and one of our three economic drivers that we have here. So what a great conversation we've had here today on the Marc McMain Show, talking with Lee Nunn, Georgia's 2020 Farmer of the Year. Do you get to repeat? Like, can you be Farmer of the Year again?
No, I don't think so.
You're done? So you haven't been slacking the past 5 years?
Yeah, we can just go at it anyway now.
Well, thank you for sharing your passion and your knowledge about farming with us here today. And, give your farmer a big smile. You see those signs that say support your local farmer. It is important to our economy, important to our way of life, important to our environment. And that has been the way it's always been here in Morgan County since those first Revolutionary War veterans came here to first till the first bit of land back in 1790. So you've been listening to the Marc McMain Show here on Q92.3 Real Country WMOQ. Bob Furr filling in for Mark on Tuesdays. I'm going to be back on Friday filling in for I forgot Doug, right? I think Doug Hollingsworth filling in. I'm going to see if I can keep up his travel theme. Until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. Keep it real, country.